pleasure. All right. Let's try this again. 3, 2, 1, go. All right. Folks, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So Rafalos, you may know me. I run Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast since about 2011. Been in the security industry about 20 years. I've consulted, I've sold things, I've done stuff. My expertise, particularly over the last decade or so, is in strategy, process, and optimization. All super cool things that'll never get me a interesting black hat talk, but that's all right because this is stuff is needed too. I've done some red team, blue team. That was all a very long time ago. I run a podcast, as I've said. I occasionally write. I'm a speaker. I tend to be a realist, and I am the White Rabbit on Twitter. I am currently at a company called Lightstream. If you've never heard of us, now's the time. Ironically, yesterday, we launched our security services business. I'm pretty proud of, so give that a shot. We're also sponsoring the conference. So this might be a good time to give us a look. All right, let's dive in. So why in the world are we discussing metrics when everybody will tell me my metrics are just fine? Well, you guys all read the news, right? And I think that the key challenge here is how do we tell a story in security? Because we're not very good at telling what's going on. Let you stare at this for a second, but this is fairly recent. These things go around every once in a while, but you'll see this thwarted 36 million email breach attempts. Wow, that's a big, scary number. Although, is it? Because I started to believe that your boards that you could use to scare to death a long time ago with these big, scary numbers are no longer ignorant of this. I think that they are desensitized to these headlines. And while early on in my career, 20 years ago, I could throw a headline at that and everyone would go, oh gosh, what do you need to fix this? Make sure this doesn't happen to us. Sorry, it doesn't exist anymore. And big, scary numbers just don't get the kind of impact that we want. And actually, wait a second. If I look at this, is the fact that they're thwarting 36 million email breach attempts daily, forget the number, is that good or bad? I mean, honestly, is that good or bad? Because 36, that's the numerator, right? Is the denominator 36 or 100 or 1,000? So are they thwarting 100% or like over a third? And therein lies the problem because denominators matter. We tend to forget that. And when I look at security dashboards and security metrics and things that security tools throw at you, the problem is metrics don't tell a story. They really don't tell you what's going on. They give you big numbers. And we have insecurity over the last 20, 25 or so years. Every dashboard I've ever seen throws really scary things at you, throws lots of numbers at you in hopes that it'll convince you it's doing a good job. So lots and lots and lots and lots of numbers. But I hope you guys understand the difference between leading and trailing indicators. And I'll come back to this a couple of times and focus on this. By the way, there's a lot of content in this talk. If you want slides, you guys know how to find me. I will also try to post these probably someplace, and I'm sure this recording will be made available. But leading and trailing indicators, keep that in the back of your head. And remember just this concept really quickly. So things are better. Are they? And why? So can I tell you if things are better in our organization? And then can I tell you why? But that is the difference between a leading and trailing indicator. And that is the problem with today's metrics is that we get into the situation where we try to draw trends and trend lines and identify the different types of numbers that we want people to understand. And we don't do a very good job at them. And then we sort of fold our hands and say, well, they just don't get it. Or, business just doesn't care about security. I think they do. I just don't think they understand what in the heck we're saying to them. And there are, in my opinion, 3 very valid reasons that there are poor metrics out there. The first one is a lack of knowledge or experience. Listen, I can't fault anybody for not having the proper knowledge or experience. I was there. I'm still there in a lot of areas. I don't know everything, and I know far from everything. And no matter how much time you spend in this industry, it seems like the longer you stay in this industry, the less you actually know of the collective whole because it keeps growing at a pace that most of us can't keep up with. And I think that's pretty much a fact. So the other one is really a fear of delivering bad news. Nobody wants to be the person to go up in front of their executives or their board and say, we are terrible at what we do. So we fudge things. We make it look good. We try to make sure that we show our numbers in a positive light. And I think that does us a terrible disservice. And the last and final one is spreading FUD. You guys know, if you're uncertainty and doubt, that's the scare tactics route, right? That's the thing we used to rely on many years ago, where we'd say, you know, oh my gosh, if you don't do this, the worst thing in the world will happen, and we'll lose all our customers, and it'll get terrible. And you know what? I tell you, bad news is okay, and sometimes bad news is good. But unfortunately, and I'm sorry, Elmer, FUD is never good. Okay, so FUD is never a good idea. It's never good to try to scare your audience. And here's why. Because you've got two possible scenarios. You can say, if I don't do it, you know, if you don't let me do this, or if you don't give me this budget, this horrible thing will happen. And one of two things happens. Either you don't get the budget, you don't get the thing, you don't get the whatever it is you wanted, and nothing happens. And then you have to go, well, we were lucky, or maybe the threat wasn't real and I kind of look like an idiot, which may not even be true, but that's the perception. And of course, we know perception becomes reality easily. The other thing is, what if you do get the budget, you do get the authority, you do get the thing, and you still get popped? Because then what? So FUD never works. Let's start with that. So I've got this thing called the bridge method, and it's relatively simple, and I'll teach it. I'll show you guys how to do it. There's a lot of information in this, so please don't try to keep up with everything and try and taking notes, because it probably isn't going to. Just pay, you know, listen as much as you'd like, and then you know, if you've got questions, I'll happily answer them. So if you think about the bridge, you've got one bank, you've got desired outcomes. The other bank, you've got security data, and you got to figure out how to get between the two. So this method is actually quite simple, and I think it's relatively easy to get from point A to point B. And I think, you know, the couple steps in this are, number one, understand the opposing banks, know what's on each side, know what the other side has, what you want, how to get there. Select the materials you want to use, build the foundation, build the bridge, and then last and not least, please don't forget this last bit, maintain the bridge. Don't forget that once you've built a program, once you've built a set of things, it doesn't magically ad infinitum maintain itself if you just walk away from it, right? Things have to continue to be run against some schedule. So first things first, you have to know your audience, and there are 3 levels of metrics and 3 levels of reporting in my experience. Level 1 is internal metrics, right? This is stuff that SecOps wants to know. How many times has the particular AV signature triggered? How many times did we have to go wipe a machine because it got, you know, whatever version of crypto lockered is out there now? How many phishing emails came in? So these are operational metrics. They don't really change anything, but it helps you understand, you know, how busy you are, whether you're, you know, if you have a 0 on a network segment in terms of detections, maybe it's not even plugged in. I wish I had a quarter for every time that happened in life, but that's a very real thing, right? And then security leadership metrics. So these are level 2 metrics. These support decision making. So these help us decide, is our investment in cybersecurity in the right place? Are we doing it right? Are we ultimately, are we supporting the right methods? Are we going in the right direction? You know, again, is the investment correct, or is it directionally sound? And then there's the last part, which is executive metrics. And I think rather than continuing to pile the other previous 2 in, which is sort of what's been happening for a long time. And I get it. There's a lot of companies that have gotten way better at this, but still, you know, I still get questions. The reason that I made this talk for this conference is because I kept getting questions around a talk I did in 2011 at OWASP around AppSec. And so I thought it was time to review. And so security metrics at the executive level really is meant to show the value of security. And we're going to focus here on this 3rd level, because I think the other 2 are pretty self-explanatory. They're pretty easy. And even if you screw them up, you're the audience, right? So if you do a lot of work and it shows you nothing, well, then you've harmed yourself or you've wasted your own time. You don't want to be the person that's standing out there professing something and get called on it in front of a broader organization or your IT peers or your executive peers. So if we get a little, if we can kind of dive behind the curtain here and get in it, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk first about this concept of the understanding the opposing banks. I would tell you there's three things that you got to do in rapid succession. And a couple of friends that I know, and myself included, we every time we used to be up on stage in front of an audience or talking about security, whether it's a meeting or whatever, it's pretty easy to ask the security people in the room, what is it that you do at your company? What do you do at whatever company you work for? And some people will tell you, I secure this, or I do AppSec that, or I pen test this, or I defend that. And the reality is, yes, but that's not really what you do, what the company does, why you exist. You exist if you're a retail company to sell stuff, if you're a services company to do services, if you're an airline to get people from point A to point B. Right? Security is a component of that overall goal, and your company has goals. They're probably in a quarterly mission statement or on a plaque in the main lobby of your office, or it's on the stationery or something. I promise you have goals. They're either somewhere around 3 to 5 goals for the year for the company, or the quarter, or the semester, whatever it is. But they're usually pretty lofty, right? You have to understand these. I don't mean just like read them and look at them and go, okay, cool, I get it. But no, like actually go through and understand, what do they mean? Why do that exist? If you live, if you live and breathe security at a hospital network, for example, odds are, and we'll use this in a later example here, odds are you care about people living and dying, right? So that's pretty important. That said, if the organization wants to increase its survivability rate or become better for patient care or whatever it is, you got to figure out how you fit into that and how you apply what you do in cybersecurity, what you do in policy or compliance or run networks or develop applications, whatever part of IT you work in. How do you support that overall goal? That is super, 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 super important, because none of the rest of this makes any sense if you don't get that. And I know that's fundamental and sort of, Fred Flintstone bedrock style, but I have to keep repeating it because to me, it's so important. So what is the business trying to achieve? And you want to be specific, not just get better, because get better is difficult to measure. Usually there are specific metrics, whether they're, OKR is a popular thing to talk about now, or whatever it is. Organizations have things they want to achieve, and you have to ask yourself, does your security strategy align? I'm going to assume yes for now. And if it doesn't, then I think you may have a different problem. But assuming yes, because you're talking about measuring alignment, let's assume that you're at least reasonably closely aligned. So I like to talk about the magic of odd numbers, numbers 3 and 5 particularly. If you're going to produce metrics or you're going to teach somebody something, do it in 3 and 5s. It's a weird psychology thing. It makes it prominent for people longer term. And I'll tell you, develop 3 key value metrics. And a value metric is something like security supports X goal by Y action. So security supports the organization's desire to grow by 30% in the by ... coming up with it. And I know some of you are listening and going, that doesn't make any sense to me, because what I do is I pen test. I have nothing to do with the business making a better profit. I promise you do. And those of you that have been in the industry a while or are trying to break in, this is the language you absolutely have to learn and speak. There's no other way around that. Let me give you a couple examples. I'll come back to this one at the hospital. And this is one I've heard a long time ago. One of the best meetings I've ever had was in a hospital network. And the person told me security supports the goal of increasing the lives saved by 2%. There's your concrete number, by decreasing the amount of time doctors wait on access to critical information, right? So in some cases, it may be caching data locally, or decreasing the time it takes to authenticate into a device, where in fact, most of us like to go, we need to do two-factor authentication and some other very important things that you guys probably just heard on this track earlier. Like 2FA is super important. 2FA, when you're trying to take a second out of the entire process to save somebody's life, probably not the most important thing in that cycle. But you got to understand that, right? You got to apply security to that. Let's talk about a logistics company. So security supports the goal of reducing the time spent in a hold state, which means logistics company moves packages around or moves things around, freight, whatever. So reducing the time spent in a hold state, which means the time something sits in and doesn't move, by increasing information availability on remote devices. How many of you guys are listening right now going, oh, information on remote devices, cringe, right? Because data is leaving that safe haven of my data center or my cloud app or whatever it is. It's going to somebody's phone or somebody's iPad or some dashboard somewhere on a electric car, whatever. So this is, this is not a super specific one, but if they would say reduce time spent in a hold state by 5%, by 7 minutes, by something, right? You have something concrete to go aim at. Because if I tell you, go make it better, you're going to ask me by how much and what does that mean? Let's talk about retailers. Security supports, this is going to be a cool example. So security supports the goal of increasing sales in a pandemic. It's as if we were in one of those right now, and everybody's trying to figure out how to bolster sales, how to get people in the door, how to get buyers buying again, how to keep their business from going under. So increasing sales, this is a general statement, but say it was by 10%, by 5%, heck, by supporting a contactless payment process. Everybody's launching contactless everything. But that means sometimes it means creating an entirely new application. Sometimes it means creating an entirely new process. Data has to move from one system to another. And security is often at the point where we're going, whoa, we can't do that. Business is like, I can and I will, otherwise we'll all be out of business. So figure it out, right? You guys have probably heard stuff like that. I know I have throughout my career. And the idea is to use the appropriate level of language in the conversation we have. So as you talk, as you make statements, for example, like this one on the retailer, right? What are the things that security could do here? Think about it in abstract terms. And I know you can think of a million things that are security oriented and have language that your execs probably will have no idea what you're saying. But think of the right and appropriate level of language. And as you do that, think of security as the enabler. Think of security as the enabler for a process. And it tends to surprise people when you go, oh, yeah, us cybersecurity folks, we're going to help you buy something. And the executive teams, the business leaders that have been around the industry a long time, sometimes get shocked when we approach them and say, yeah, we're going to act like an enabler for you because we get it. We know what the problem is. We know you're struggling. And we have some ideas on how to make things better, not just how to slow things down. So let's come back to leading and trailing indicators. There's not really a way to, you're not all in front of me, so I can't get you to raise your hands, but think about it. How many of you guys actually know the difference between a leading and trailing indicator, what they mean, and how to get them? The unfortunate part of most of your metrics are trailing indicators. What that means is you're measuring the results, which is fine, but they only tell you what's already happened, right? So, I mean, again, perfectly fine. And they will tell you that you have improved or not. Those of you that are Formula One fans like I am, sometimes you watch a driver, one race to another, go around the track, same track, and they've taken out like 0.2 of a second. You're like, wow, that's incredible. That's a lot faster. And then you sort of go, okay, what do they do? Like, what happened? They improved, but why? Right? So the people that control these things, that people that care, which in security is you and I, want to know why. So you want to know why something changed, right? Did it got better or worse? Why? And so action X resulted in reaction Y. These are the examples that I've been using for years. And it's very true that we typically, if you look at almost every dashboard that you've seen built, if you look at the stuff that our vendors provide us, it is reaction Y, right? Even the trend lines are every month we've discovered this many new vulnerabilities, and you sort of look at it and go, okay, but why? There's a talk I did a long time ago about software security vulnerabilities, and I showed a trend graph from one of my clients at the time, and it was the number of critical vulnerabilities in the enterprise going up, and it was crazy going up. And that almost got that person fired. And he's like, I don't get it. Why is this such a thing? And I said, okay, what are you telling people? Are you showing me that your enterprise development lifecycle is getting worse at security? Or are you showing me that your accuracy is getting better in testing? Or do you have more tools? Or that you've scanned more applications? And they went, oh, right. So let me give you a concrete example. Your vulnerability scanner found 1,000 new critical vulnerabilities today versus the last time it ran. Think about what your reaction would be. Mine is, why? I want to know why. And that's usually the look on my face is, oh, well, that's interesting. What happened there, right? Those of you familiar with Archer know that look well. So the reality is you added 10 new subnets to the vulnerability scanner that you've never scanned before. So you've given yourself, that much more coverage of the organization. How much more coverage? I don't know. How many subnets do you totally have? Let that kind of permeate through your brain for a second. But what the lesson learned here is more coverage means, ta-da, more results. And the problem is, if all I gave you was that you have 1,000 new vulnerabilities, the trailing indicator, which is that, will tell you what happened. You found 1,000 new vulnerabilities. And for the most part, you'd go, oh my gosh, we are so much worse than we were the last time this thing ran. How could we be that bad? When in reality, you're actually probably, that's a great number to have if you tell me why, right? So the leading indicator tells you why, and you absolutely, desperately, 100% guaranteed, no doubt about it, need both of them. If you don't have both leading and trailing indicators on your dashboards today, ask yourself, what kind of story are you telling? And are you wondering why nobody is listening or paying attention? This may be the reason. All right, so now that you get a decent understanding of both sides of it, let's talk about what you're working with. So again, I'm going to make this assumption that your security strategy is aligned to business outcomes. It's something you can sit and reflect on and think about and go, okay, are we supporting the mission? Is cybersecurity, info security, enterprise security, whatever you call yourselves as an organization, do you support the business? The answer is either yes or no. If you do things that the company cares about, and I promise you the things are not security, how do you protect? How do you enable? How do you do all those things, process optimize, et cetera, et cetera? Those are important things to think about. And this is for you to reflect on, right? If not, if you don't support that business, if your security strategy is not tightly aligned, if you don't have a strong security lead, CISO, director, VP, whatever, this will not work, because you're going to be building castles with sand, and it will not work. So each goal likely has multiple supporting projects or activities. So if you've got a goal to help the organization, create 5% more sales by deploying that contactless payment application, how do you do that? How do you what are the activities? I bet you it's not a single security project or a single security activity. There's probably like half a dozen, maybe more, of things that support everything from AppSec to reviews to tooling to architecture and all these things that get involved. So you get to measure the existing state at start. So how bad is it? How good is it? I don't know. How is it? Right? You get to make that bad or good decision ephemerally at some point. But talk to me about what it looks like right now. And a lot of us go, well, I don't know. I have no way of knowing how bad it is. It doesn't exist today. Great. If it doesn't exist, that's a measurable state. That's a 0. It's not a terrible place to start, frankly. And you're going to end up building this pyramid. If you've never seen anybody build one of these, they're pretty interesting. It's basically, again, very simple. Tactical metrics at the bottom. These are technical data demonstrate effectiveness of your activities, right? So how many, again, how many vulnerabilities have you found? How many times have you scanned? How many developers have taken training? How many reused modules were there talking applications? Like these are all pretty easy things to do. Security impact, this is a little trickier because you say because of X, the result was Y on a security level. So because security implemented a new tool and it got 80% coverage, the developers thereby produced applications that had 20% less critical vulnerabilities release over release. I mean, that's a valid thing to say. It takes years to get to that point sometimes, but that's your security impact metric. And now you get to that 1 or 2 strategic metrics. These are evidence of a positive or negative goal level impact. So these are things that you should think about. What is your positive or negative action against that goal? What is your impact to that overall goal that the company or the organization has? So things like 75% of DevOps teams trained on tools, AppSec coverage increased by 50%, critical vulns in the application were down by 30%. These are all very legitimate things to report on. Do they go straight to the strategic? No, because you can't clearly draw that line, right? But you can roll those up and say all those together decreased application risk by X as a result of optimized tooling DevOps processes in the tactical part of the pyramid. And then several roll-up metrics, right? Implementing security process X allowed 50% faster iterative releases of touchless payment widget, which means we got it to market faster, which means people could use it faster, which means ultimately people could buy more and spend more, and yay, profitability. So that is how you kind of build that pyramid up, and it's how you demonstrate these things. I'd be remiss if I told you that visuals in the pyramid like this are useless. I love building these because you can see, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 15 of these tactical metrics roll up into like 1 or 2 or 3 of these, again, 3 and 5s, it's a magic number, into these roll-up metrics, and then you can directly show impact against that strategy that the business is trying to take. And that is it's a magical point when you can get to that. It's pretty cool. So ensure your results are repeatable. I can't stress this enough. If you can't repeat something, this is why some science becomes bunk, because you're like, oh, I tested something, or I ran this process and I got the answer 25. You go, great, do it again. Like, oh, I got 37 this time. Like, okay, do it again. Oh, I got 12 this time. All right, that's not repeatable because what in the heck are you doing? So you have to be able to do the thing, right? Do the collection process or do whatever it is to get your metrics repeatedly to get the same number. Consistency and precision are important. So ensure results are repeatable, and then of course show your work. Remember back in grade school and high school, for some of us, you could get the problem wrong in math and physics, but if you showed your work, even if the answer was wrong, you could still get partial credit. Not quite like that, but similar, right? Show your work is important. People want to know that you're not doing black magic behind the scenes there. And guys, this is security. We have been doing magic and saying, trust me, I'm the expert here for 20, 25 years in some cases. It doesn't win you any favors to say, I'm smarter than you, just believe me, because they don't, right? They want to see how you got there. People want to be educated. You should want to show them. All right, step 3, strong foundation is essential. And to build that foundation, you have to build a draft of the pyramid. Build yourself one of these things. They're kind of fun. Find a whiteboard, grab a piece of paper, just draw it out physically. I'm a very visual person, so I could put this in a spreadsheet and it wouldn't make, my brain couldn't grapple with it, but I put it on a whiteboard. I go, oh, I get it now. It's easy. Right? So demonstrating that roll-up value is important, and what you want to do with the target audience that you have is get the light bulb to go on. It's going to feel differently if you've never done this before, because people are going to look at you and go, oh, I get it. And that is one of those moments where suddenly life feels much better and you don't feel like the redheaded stepchild and ignored kid in the room. Hopefully you don't feel like that now, but there's a lot of you out there that still struggle with relevance and being noticed and being taken seriously. And that moment when the light bulb goes on, because you've shown them impact metrics something that makes them understand that all that magic you do in the back offices, in the basements of their buildings, with all that money they've given you, that it actually does something for their bottom line or their overall mission. I tell you what, you're going to get, but be prepared for something. You will get peppered and hammered with questions and Q&A and people wanting to know more. That's okay, except for that it gets kind of uncomfortable for those of us that don't want to stand around 100 people for all day. So make sense to all the stakeholders. Make sure that they understand and it makes sense to them. It's that light bulb moment. It's got to make sense to them, not just to you and your team, because obviously it's going to make sense to you. You built it. Make it make sense to your stakeholders. Make sure that the person you're talking to, this is a level 3 metric, your executives and your board, go ask them, does this make sense to you? And if they sort of go, go, no, seriously, like, does this going from here to here to here, does this make sense? And make sure that you verify that with your audience. And it's not just like get the head nod, but get that buy-in. Make sure they go, yeah, you know what? This is how I want to see you reporting what you do. And once you've got that aha moment, that, oh yeah, here we go. This is how we're going to do it. This is how I demonstrate value. This is how I get promoted. This is how I show that I'm a valuable part of this company, not just because some regulatory body says I have to exist, but I'm actually valued here. That moment of buy-in is really, really a great feeling and a really brilliant moment. So next step, get it built. Well, look, this part of the conversation is relatively simple. It's developing your collection process. At one point in my career, I was new to a security team in a very, very large company. And I ended up being the metrics guy for the month, and we all rotated, right? So somebody's job was to go to all the different platforms we had, Symantec antivirus, God help us, and our Snort instance and whatever else we had out there, and collect the metrics that we said we would collect. This usually means lots of CSV exports, lots of screenshots, copying into a spreadsheet, massaging data, color coding. Like, that job sucked. And maybe you give that to your intern for a while as a hazing project. I don't know, but hopefully develop that collection process. Make sure it doesn't suck for somebody. Make sure, remember when I said it should be repeatable? Make sure your collection process is repeatable. And then collect, aggregate, refine, and distill. Take all the data you can, aggregate it in a way that makes sense, where the data actually tells a story. Refine it, get it to tell the right story. Because just throwing together numbers really isn't all that exciting. Get it to tell the story that you want, right? Because these are just numbers, and ultimately you want it to tell the thing that you want it to tell using the truth of the numbers, and then distill them. Because not every metric is required, and not every metric is going to give you a good number or something that you care about. So it's important that you distill these things and ask, do I need this? Does this make sense? Does this tell a proper story, or just add to the confusion? And again, automate as much as possible, because I promise you, nobody's excited about collecting metrics. I really can't stress that enough. So automate and create visuals. I'm a big visual person. I love visuals. I love stop signs, red, yellow, green. Right? Simplicity for me is awesome. If I can look at your metrics dashboard and see it's green, I'm excited. That's great. If I see it's yellow, it makes me a little nervous. I get a little anxiety. If it's red, I'm starting to ask, before you even hit the chair, I'm going, hold on. Why is this red? Why am I red on this dashboard? I used to, work for an organization where there's a bunch of CIOs of separate businesses, and we got them to a state where they competed with each other. Nobody wanted to be red. And if they were yellow, they were like, all right, you could always tell, because the dashboards went out, a day before the big, explanatory meeting. And the people, the businesses that were green, it was just the CIO kind of listening in and really, not having anything to say, just sort of multitasking. The yellow ones, they were kind of ready with some sort of explanation. When they were red, their entire security team was in the room with them, or virtually with them, right? Why? Because somebody's going to have to do some explaining. And it was absolutely necessary that somebody explained what it was. The power of color is there for you, right? And I tell you what, graphs are good. Graphs are fantastic, but graphs require context. And I'm going to show you a graph I pulled, and I stole this shamelessly. If you're the person I stole it from, I've already asked you permission, but nobody knows who you are, so it's okay. What if you put this on a dashboard? Let's just stare at this for a second. Vulnerabilities and the vertical, time on the horizontal. You go, wow, we started getting a ton of vulnerabilities. Something happened, and now we're getting less. Is that good? Is that bad? Like, I don't. What are we looking at here? Like, what happened at that point right there in the middle? What is going on there? What does this all mean? And so these graphs are cute for starting conversations, but you had better be able to give me the leading and trailing indicators for that thing, because it is absolutely not anywhere near good enough to say, hey, we're better. Because better, why are you better? Are you better because you're awesome? Are you better because you did something? Are you better because accidents, right? You have to be able to be better and tell somebody why. And of course, the last and final part of this, don't fall into disrepair. Bridges must be maintained. And that is a very, 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 very important point I want to continue to make with you guys, is that this is important stuff. This is business changing. This is career changing. This impacts budget. This impacts people's lives and people's abilities to do what they do. So don't think you're going to do this once, automate it, and then go away. Because your business changes, and if you don't change with it, well, Tyrannosaurus Rex would like to talk to you, right? You don't exist. You stop being relevant. And because business changes at such a rapid pace, and there's so many variables to it, the economy, good God, global pandemics, whatever, right? A new CEO comes in, you get a new CISO. I don't know. There's a million different things that could happen. And divestitures, you buy a bunch of new companies, consolidations, all those things. So you should always challenge the results that you get on your dashboards in the things that you report against the assumptions that you make, against that strategy that the business wants to take. Challenge yourself. Is what I'm reporting still relevant? Is what I'm reporting showing that I am doing the very best that I can? And ask yourself, how can we do better? What do I need to do to make these indicators better? Both from a security perspective, like how do I make the organization better? And how can I better show this visually? If I've got somebody in that boardroom, there's 10 people in that boardroom, 8 of them are nodding along, one person looks like they could care less, and one person is completely confused. You've got 2 people you've got to win over, and you got to figure out what it is that they need to see to understand what in the world you are doing right now. Because if there's 2, there's one confused and one dissent, or one completely out in left field, then you got to figure out what it is. How can you get better? Work on leading indicators. You have to have those. And I promise you, if you've got really good metrics, please, please, please hit me up after this. On Twitter, on LinkedIn, wherever. Find a way to get me the way you show things, the way you present. I'm very, very curious on how organizations measure, how it impacts their budgets, how it impacts their size, particularly right now, because we're in a really weird time for the entire planet. And as we go through this awkward time, and security, is victim to the same budgetary shortfalls everybody else is experiencing right now. Unfortunately, criminal activity did not go down, as many of you have painfully noticed. So this is going to be a problem for us. You got to demonstrate positive, negative change to trailing indicators. How do you do that? What is the impact that you're having what is the needle moving to, better or worse? And what is it that's moving that needle? You don't just need to know that you went faster on that track that day. You need to know that it was because of an aero modification, or is because, the driver skipped breakfast that morning and was a half a kilo lighter, or you got different tires, or I don't know, one of a million different things that could go wrong. This is how you get direction. This is how you figure out whether your organization is going in a positive or negative direction from a security perspective. This is how you avoid FUD. And I'm sorry, Elmer, but again, please avoid FUD, and please avoid the big scary numbers. It does all of us a disservice. And because I think ultimately, people get wise to this. Your boards will get wise to this. Your organizations will get wise to this. And security supports business objectives. Your metrics should prove it. If you can't find a way to prove that what your security organization does supports your business objectives, I think you're doing it wrong. I don't think that's a revelation, right? The truth really is, few things are worse than getting a positive result and not knowing why. And I'd rather get a bad result and know why I got there than get a good result and have no idea why I got there. Because then you are afraid, you're paralyzed, because you don't know if you make an adjustment, if it's going to go up or down. No clue. And so I'm going to leave you guys on that truth right there. That is probably the thing I want to leave you with. And also squirrels with flamethrowers, because those are super cool. So thanks for listening. I hope this was entertaining, infotaining, educational, edutaining. Somewhere Todd wants to, his head wants to explode because he makes fun of me for using that term. But again, guys, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. I'm around. I'm on Twitter and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. If you've got good metrics, please share them. This is something that we all need to improve, and we all need to share, and we all need to figure out what works and what doesn't. So I will leave you on that. John, thanks for having me, folks.
Yeah,
thanks for
coming. I just want to mention that we do have track 1 discussions in our Discord. If you have any time, you want to head over there and chat with people at any time this weekend. We do have Discord chat rooms so that people can have little discussions and do some networking. So check out our Discord. And
we'll try to pop over there as well.
Definitely reach out to Raf and our other speakers if you have any questions. Everybody's very friendly and approachable, and I don't know of any of them actually biting, but we'll move on and grab our next speaker now. Thanks again, Raf.
All right, cheers, guys.